What we're really promoting in this region, in the discussion with the relationship Anne Marie talked about, is how we can convince companies that by locating in the upper Midwest, we can reduce their cost by some unique things in terms of their supply chain. If we look at the typical supply chain, we're looking at the primary activities of sourcing, production, handling, transportation, inventory carrying costs, duties and taxes are the types of costs that we deal with in terms of delivering the total cost to you and I. And again, we only think of what we pay at the grocery store, what we pay at the clothing store, at the electronics store. But all these activities take place as we move product through the supply chain. And our preference is we pay less. And supply chain has taken a lot of cost out. I said in the transport area, from 20 years ago, the percentage of supply chain costs, transportation costs, was about 20% of GDP, and now it's down to 10% of GDP. We've taken that much out of it by doing it much more efficiently. How does the supply chain provide value add in terms of industry? And it could be for-profit commercial industry. It could be just as well, and increasingly even more so for nonprofit industry, both healthcare kind of things or governmental or educational application. Traditionally, supply chain focus on reducing cost, and that's very important, continues to be very important. We've taken a lot of excess cost out of business processes by focusing on supply chain. But the second two areas are increasingly important. One of those is increasing revenue, increasing availability of product, what I've called fill rate here, increasing availability of product at different locations, and to go to different markets, and particularly export markets. One of the major opportunities we see in Michigan, as Darwin will talk about, is the opportunity to take the tremendous agricultural products we produce in the state and deliver them cost effectively around the world. And supply chain is the thing that makes that happen. We can produce a lot of it here, but unless we can effectively export it to other regions of the world, we don't get the benefits of that. Customizations and new product introductions. So all those things are things we do to increase the revenue associated with the region. Or in the case of the upper Midwest, the Great Lakes region, the revenue associated with what we bring into the state. The third part there on the bottom is asset utilization, which is another key performance or another critical value add in terms of supply chain. And that one refers to the idea of reducing the assets, reducing the fixed assets we have in place. The facilities, because if we can do the same thing with fewer facilities, we're better off. The transportation equipment. One of the biggest challenges in supply chain today is congestion. And if you drive on the Ohio Turnpike or up and down Route 95 on the East Coast, you see some of the congestion as a result of supply chain. We could keep adding trucks to the road, but the fact is that's not really a long-term solution. We're going to get more congestion. So how do we more effectively use those trucks? If we could look inside those trucks, we would see that many of them had a lot of empty space. How can we work collaboratively together to do it? One of the groups of companies we teach on the west side of the state is Steelcase. And we've also got Hayworth and Herman Miller over there. And interesting talking to their supply chain executives over time and how they've effectively collaborated to jointly deliver product in the same truck. So we've got 3 competitors that deliver product in the same truck, at least for a point in the supply chain. That's effectiveness and not really changing the competitive environment, but it's saving us all money and it's saving us a lot of congestion. Well, what are some of the questions that the private sector asks? Where do we put plants? Where do we put facilities like distribution centers? Which markets do we serve from each distribution centers? Which products do we serve? How can we effectively export to international markets? Those are all questions that the private sector asks of their supply chain professionals. And they're trying to figure out how you can structure it in an environment like we have here. And the unique thing about the Michigan region, the upper Midwest region, is we're at a crossroads. And if we look back 300 years ago, that's how Detroit came about, because it was at a crossroads. It was at a crossroads at that time of the water delivery system, which was the only thing we had. Now we have it at a crossroads of an air delivery system, crossroads of a rail delivery system, and a crossroads for a motor carrier delivery system, if we think of the Canadian and upper Midwest environment. Why is the public sector interested in supply chain? Well, it produces jobs. The multiplier effect for supply chain jobs are anything from a factor of 2 to a factor of 6. That means for every one supply chain job we get 2 other jobs or 6 other jobs. The manufacturing and other value-added operations tend to be towards the higher part. The distribution center ones tend to be towards the lower, but it has pretty good multipliers in terms of the impact. The other critical part is it makes it more effective for companies to operate here. As was pointed out in the video, what drives a company to operate, put a supply chain operation in a particular region is what's the value-added proposition for them. What's the cost effectiveness for them? And if we make it more effective to attract new companies, it's obviously going to be much more effective for the companies to stay in the region as well. And in the way it utilizes the existing infrastructure environments. One of the things that makes this very important today is the infrastructure to support U.S. supply chains is congested. Some of the key infrastructure elements, the West Coast ports, the East Coast ports, and the Midwest hub in Chicago. Those are all very congested infrastructure items. And the more you put product through there, it's going to be more congested. And that adds into delays. And delays translates to increased costs. Trying to get industry to understand the degree of increased cost is really the challenge of what we're about.